it is my pleasure to introduce our final keynote speaker, Desmond Meade, who some of you have had the pleasure of meeting already in the breakout room, who will share some inspiring words about how he rises up for voting rights and his community. And so with that, I'd love to introduce him. Desmond Meade is a formerly homeless returning citizen who overcame many obstacles to eventually become the president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. Also, he is chair of Floridians for a Fair Democracy, a graduate of Florida International University College of Law, and a Ford Global Fellow. Recognized by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2019, Desmond presently leads efforts to empower and civically re-engage local communities across the state and to reshape local, state, and national criminal justice policies. As president and executive director, Desmond led the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition to a historic victory in 2018 with the successful passage of Amendment 4, a grassroots citizens initiative which restored voting rights to over 1.4 million Floridians with past felony convictions. A sought-after speaker, Desmond has appeared on radio and television and has spoken before national organizations like Bread for the World and now the Andrew Goodman Foundation. Desmond is married and has 5 beautiful children, so let's give him a warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Desmond, and I'll hand the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and I'm already feeling the love, seeing all of the comments in the chat. I want to first start by just really appreciating the Andrew Goodman Foundation for inviting me in this space. As Nicole mentioned, I did have an opportunity to drop in on one of the breakout rooms, and I was, I would say, quite pleased to hear the discussion, especially around race and civic engagement, and especially on the campuses. And I'm just, happy to be around a group of young people that are doing amazing work across this country. While I was in the session, I was going over some of my notes and I was like, wow, there's just so much to say. And just so excited about what's going on. And so I knew I had to pare it down a little bit. And so I'm going to try to just really touch on a few points in this session. First, I want to just start out just giving a brief synopsis of my story, because I think it's really just so relevant and speak to why I do what I do and why what I do is so important. In August of 2005, I found myself standing in front of railroad tracks, waiting on a train to come so I can jump in front of it. As I stood there, I was at the lowest point in my life. I was homeless. I was addicted to drugs. I was recently released from prison, unemployed, and didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. The only thing I owned was the clothes on my back. And I knew that I was a huge disappointment to my parents. And I wanted to end my life. And as I was standing there, I was just contemplating about how much pain I was going to feel when the train ran over my body, whether I was going to die instantly or whether I had to go through moments of agonizing pain. But even the thought of the pain that I may have had to endure was not enough to make me move. And I stood there and I waited and I waited. But fortunately that train did not come, and I ended up crossing those tracks and I checked myself into drug treatment. And after completing that, I moved back into a homeless shelter. And while there, I decided to enroll in college because I wanted to do something to increase my esteem, my self-esteem. I wanted to do something that would prevent me from going back to using drugs or relapsing. Because I felt that if I relapsed one more time, that this time I probably wouldn't be as lucky as I was before. And so I enrolled in the paralegal program at Miami-Dade College, and I did extremely well, graduating at the top of my class. Continued my education after the urging of my professors, and I pursued a bachelor's in public safety management with a concentration in criminal justice. Because of the experience I had getting arrested and appearing before judges and getting imprisoned. And after successfully completing that program, I was fortunate enough to be able to get accepted in a law school. And in May of 2014, I graduated with a law degree from Florida International University College of Law. You know, I remember so many times in the past when I used to tell that story, rooms used to break out in applause, and I would always um, follow up the applause with a statement of that my story did not have a happy ending, because I lived in the state of Florida, which disenfranchised so many people who've had previous felony convictions. I can tell you that, you know, I could have been that person that just sat down and just wallowed in the misery and complained about the fact that, even though I um was able to overcome so many things and in life, so many obstacles, and be able to turn my life around and contribute to my society, only to be barred from participating, barred from practicing law, barred from owning or renting a home in so many different areas, and ultimately barred from voting. I could have just complained about it, but looking around and seeing that there were over a million returning citizens that was also in the same boat as I was, I decided to get up and I decided to do something. And it was connected to uh, 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 um, some moments that I had experienced going through my drug treatment, going through the period of homelessness, and it connected to a brief story. A friend of mine's, a great friend of mine's named Frank. His son was murdered on campus, and it just so happened that Frank is a Cuban, but his wife was Jewish, and so they had a Jewish funeral. And I remember attending that funeral, and the rabbi was talking about how the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea were two bodies of water in the Middle East that was so drastically different. And but one thing was that both of these bodies of water, he surmised, did receive their nutrients or their blessings from the same source. And his question that he posed to the people in the audience that day was, how could it be that these two bodies of water that receive their nutrients from the same source be so drastically different? You had the Sea of Galilee, which was a vibrant body of water full of life. You can go fishing there, vacation there, the whole 9 yards. But yet the Dead Sea was the exact opposite, which was, it was dead, it was void of life. And after letting us ponder for a while, the answer was so profound, and it was that the Sea of Galilee had what we call tributaries, and so whatever blessings it received, it passed on to other bodies of water, while the Dead Sea was self-enclosed, and every blessing that it, or nutrients it received, it held on to the point where it became oversaturated and it killed itself from within, right? And that was when I heard that, that was so indicative of life, that how we could see people who appear to have it all but yet be void of love, right? And not happy, while people who may not have it all, right, are a joy to be around, and they are making impact around with the people that they surround themselves with, right? And so I realized that one of the keys in operating and existing on this planet is that every blessing I have, or every opportunity I have, or advantage that I may have, if I can use it to help other people, if I'm able to pass that blessing on, then that acts as a filtration system to my life, and it improves my life, and it makes it more vibrant, right? It makes it more impactful, and we can make a difference in our community. And so that was the mindset I had when I engaged in the work around felon disenfranchisement, because I felt that one of the better ways to empower the communities that have been suffering from systemic racism, that have been suffering from voter suppression, whose issues have been ignored, whose children, whose daughters and sons have been murdered in the streets and left to lay in the streets like animals, who've been hung on trees, who've been marginalized, who've been redlined, and all of these things. The best way to advocate for them is by engaging and empowering them, right, to have the right to vote. And those that do have the right to vote, we encourage them right? And we educate them, and we encourage them again to actually go out to vote, right? How do we do that? And I think that, you know, in the work that the Andrew Goodman Foundation is promoting and pushing about creating a more inclusive democracy and making sure that access to the voting booths is not denied to anyone, right? And even if you don't look like me, even if you may not think like me, that you should have that same access to democracy as I should have. And that is such a, what I've discovered to be such a powerful and uplifting thing. And we engage in this Amendment 4 campaign. And even though the experts said that it was impossible to restore voting rights to people with previous felony convictions, what we found was when we got on the campuses, when we went in the communities and the coffee shops, in the beauty salons, when we went to the supermarkets, wherever, the clubs, and we talked to people about second chances, and we talked to people about creating a more inclusive democracy, what we found was the people wanted that more than anything. What we found is that there were people that was more inclined to come together along the lines of humanity, to come together with the idea that this democracy should be accessible to everyone. And because of that, we were able to successfully pass Amendment 4, which re-enfranchised over 1.4 million people in the state of Florida who previously faced a lifetime bar. Now, let me tell you, this effort, as it was said in my introduction, this effort caused me to be named Time 100 most influential person in the world. And I remember when I went to the gala, and I was already blown away by the fact that, you know, I was counted among one of the 100 most influential people, not in the country, but rather in the world. And I remember when I told my wife, when I found out, and I was like, honey, do they mean the country? And she said, no, baby, they meant the world. And my only response to her was that there were more than 100 countries in the world, right? And so I was blown away when I went there. But as I was sitting among the celebrities and the stars, and we got to meet so many people, and I was proud of the fact that I was in between Michelle Obama and Lady Gaga when they made the announcement. I thought that was a good bookend. I remember having a conversation with one of the Time executives and told them that I think they made a mistake because they put The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, on the cover of that issue of Time 100. And I was like, you put the wrong person. You should have put me on there. Right. And it wasn't because I was full of myself or whatever, because I wasn't. But what I told them was that by putting me on that cover, then anyone that got that edition would know that you don't have to be a movie star. You don't have to be an athlete. You don't have to be a billionaire or even a politician to have an impact in your community, in your state, in the country, or even the world. That if a person like Desmond Meade, who's addicted to crack cocaine, who was homeless, who was suicidal, who had a record a mile long, could transform himself and have such a profound impact to where he's one of the 100 most influential people in the world, then what does that say about you? And that's what I ask each and every one of you that's looking right now at me or that's listening right now. What does that say that you can do? Right. And I am telling you that you already are halfway there. Right. You're halfway there because you're engaging in things that empower other people. Because the key to me being one of the 100 most influential in the world, the key to the impact that I've had was the fact that I had dedicated my life to empowering other people and creating a more inclusive democracy, and doing it being powered by love. Understanding that love in its simplest form is wanting for your neighbor what you would want for yourself. Understanding that in spite of our differences, in spite of our different ethnicities or the color of our skin or even our political preferences, that at the heart of who you are is a human being, and we are connected through that strong bind or that strong bond of humanity, knowing that at the end of the day, that if I care for you and if I challenge you to get involved in our democracy, that we will create something that is more vibrant, right? Something that is better, right, for all of us, something that would hold elected officials even more accountable, and something that will make our democracy something to be proud of. That's what we can do. That's what you've already started doing on your campus. And so I tell you that if I could go from where I was to and to get to where I am today, then that means that you can go even further in leaps and bounds. And so I want to encourage you to rise up, just like the name of the conference, rise up and accept that the challenge of being a change maker, accept the challenge of creating a difference, accept the challenge of crossing boundaries and engaging with people that you may not be comfortable with, even with people that may not be in your inner circle. Accept the challenge of binding humanity together and keeping people above politics. Accept the challenge to love. Thank you once again so much, Andrew Goodman Foundation, for having me. And I am so proud of the work that you young folks are doing in your campuses around civic engagement. God knows we need it now more than ever.